The chamber was larger than any building on Earth. Ambassador David Hawkins stood on a floating platform at its center, surrounded by darkness that stretched in every direction. Above him, below him, and on all sides, thousands of lights began to flicker on. Each light was an alien representative. Each one belonged to a species that had conquered the stars. While humanity was still learning to make fire, David kept his hands steady at his sides. Behind him stood Dr. Lena Moss, Earth's leading expert on alien languages, and General Thomas Reed, commander of Earth's defense forces. 3 humans, alone, facing the judgment of the galaxy. A voice filled the chamber. It did not come from speakers. It came from everywhere at once, vibrating through bone and blood and thought. Species 7422. Designation: Human. Origin: Sol System. Planet Earth. You stand before the Galactic Sovereignty Council to answer for violations of the Prime Containment Accord. David looked up at the source of the voice. The Grand Sovereign floated above them all, a being made entirely of golden light arranged in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Its name was Korthus, and it had ruled this council for 50,000 years. You were classified as a developing species, Korthus continued. You were placed under observation quarantine. No contact was to be made until your civilization reached the appropriate level of advancement. This process typically requires between 10,000 and 100,000 years. The lights around the chamber pulsed with agreement. You achieved faster then. Light travel in less than 200 years after. Discovering radio waves. This is unprecedented. This is dangerous. And when our observation ships approached to assess this development, you destroyed them. David felt Lena tense beside him. He did not look at her. He did not look at Reed. He kept his eyes on the golden light above. 3 ships, Korthus said. 47 crew members. All dead. Killed by weapons that should not exist in your corner of the galaxy. The chamber erupted. Sounds that David could not identify filled the space. Clicking, humming, telepathic pressure, flashes of color that seemed to carry meaning. The translator device in his ear struggled to keep up. Primitive beasts, one voice cut through. It came from a cluster of mechanical shells that glowed with harsh red energy. They should be sterilized before they spread. The Valdari hegemony agrees, another voice said. This one came from a massive shape that looked like a mountain made of ice. Containment has failed. Elimination is the only remaining option. David waited. He had been told to wait. Earth scientists had studied every piece of information they could gather about the Council. They knew its rules. They knew its history. And they knew that humanity had exactly one chance to survive this day. The accused may speak, Korthus announced. David stepped forward. His boots made no sound on the floating platform. Every light in the chamber turned toward him. Trillions of alien eyes watching a single human. Grand Sovereign, David said. His voice was calm, steady. Members of the Galactic Council, I am honored to stand before you today. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Or what passed for laughter among species that had never evolved mouths. Honored? The red mechanical voice said, You are here to be sentenced, not honored. I understand that, David replied. And yet I am still honored, because this is the first time humanity has been allowed to speak for itself. For 200 years, you watched us. You studied us. You made decisions about our future without ever asking what we wanted. Today, for the first time, you are listening. The chamber grew quiet. You say we destroyed your ships, David continued. This is true, but you have not asked why. Why does not matter, the ice mountain rumbled. You killed Council observers. The penalty is extinction. The penalty is death, David agreed. but only for unprovoked aggression. We did not fire first. Your observers did. Silence. Complete and absolute. That is a lie, the red mechanical voice snapped. The Valdare do not lie. Our ships were on a peaceful observation mission. Then perhaps you should review the mission logs, David said. He reached into his jacket and removed a small device. We recovered them from the wreckage. He pressed a button. Above the platform, a holographic display appeared. It showed 3 sleek alien vessels approaching Earth. It showed them scanning the planet. And then it showed them opening fire on a passenger shuttle leaving orbit. 212 civilians, families, children, vaporized in seconds. The chamber was silent. Your observers were not observing, David said. They were testing. They wanted to see how we would respond to an attack. Well, Grand Sovereign, now you know. The hologram shifted. It showed what happened next. Human ships, crude and ugly compared to the alien vessels, rose from Earth's surface. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. They should have been destroyed in seconds. Instead, they won. You used nuclear weapons, Quarthus said. Its golden light flickered with something that might have been surprise. Primitive fission devices. Such weapons have not been seen in this galaxy for 1,000,000 years. Because you banned them, David said. Because they were too dangerous. Too unpredictable. Too effective against species that depend on energy shields. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. We never got that memo. General Reed stepped forward. His voice was gravel and iron. Our ships carried weapons your observers could not block. Our pilots flew with tactics your computers could not predict. Your people died because they assumed we would fight the way everyone else fights. We do not. The red mechanical lights were flickering rapidly now. This changes nothing. They still violated the quarantine. They still killed Council personnel. Personnel who fired first, Lena spoke up. Her voice was softer than the men beside her, but it carried just as far. Your own laws state that defensive action is permitted against aggression. We defended ourselves. Nothing more. Quarthus floated lower, its golden geometry rearranging into new patterns. The laws are clear, but they have never been applied to a species outside the Council before. Then apply them now, David said. Or admit that your laws mean nothing. The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives screamed at each other. Lights flashed. The translator in David's ear overloaded and went silent. He stood in the center of it all, waiting. Finally, Quarthus raised what might have been a hand. Silence fell. A vote will be taken, Quarthus announced. On Resolution 445, the extermination of the human species and sterilization of the Sol system. David's heart pounded in his chest, but his face showed nothing. However, Quarthus continued, the accused has raised valid procedural objections. Before the vote, evidence must be reviewed. This council will reconvene in one standard cycle. The lights began to dim. Representatives were disappearing, returning to their own ships and worlds. Ambassador Hawkins, Quarthus said privately, its voice now only in David's mind. You have bought your species one day. I suggest you use it wisely. David bowed his head slightly. One day is all we need. When he turned to face Lena and Reed, his calm expression finally cracked. Just slightly. Just enough for them to see the fear underneath. That went better than expected, Reed muttered. It is not over, Lena said quietly. They are going to vote to kill us. The evidence might delay them, but it will not change the outcome. David nodded. He looked up at the fading lights, at the chamber that held the power to end his entire species with a single decision. Then we need to change the game, he said. Contact Earth. Tell them to initiate Protocol Omega. Reed's eyes widened. David, that protocol is theoretical. We do not even know if it will work. Then we had better hope it does. David straightened his jacket and began walking toward the exit. Because in 24 hours, either humanity joins this council as equals, or we burn everything down trying. The human delegation's quarters were a prison disguised as luxury. Crystal walls offered views of distant galaxies. Furniture shaped itself to human bodies. Food appeared from nowhere, perfectly matched to Earth's nutritional requirements. But there were no doors, no windows that opened, no way to leave until the council decided to let them. David Hawkins stood at the crystal wall, watching ships move through the darkness outside. Thousands of vessels from hundreds of species, all gathered at Station Prime to witness humanity's judgment. Some of them were already celebrating. They thought they knew how this would end. They were wrong. The transmission reached Earth, General Reed announced, entering the room. His face was grim. Protocol Omega is active. But David, the Joint Chiefs want to know what exactly we are doing. So do I. David did not turn from the window. What do you know about the founding charter? Reed paused. The document that created the council? Every species that joins has to sign it. Basic stuff. Laws against genocide, rules for trade, that sort of thing. That is what they teach, David said quietly. But the original charter was not about rules. It was about power. Dr. Lena Moss looked up from her translation device. She had been studying the council's archives for hours, searching for anything that could help them. What do you mean? David finally turned to face them. His eyes were dark with knowledge that seemed to weigh him down. 12 million years ago, a species called the Architects built everything. The faster-than-light drives everyone uses. The communication networks. The stations. Even this council itself. They were so far beyond every other species that comp. Arison was meaningless. We know the history, Reed said impatiently. The Architects disappeared. Nobody knows why. The council rose from the ashes of their civilization. The council did not rise, David replied. It was placed. The Architects knew they were dying. Something was hunting them, something they could not defeat. So they created the council as a caretaker government. They wrote rules to keep the galaxy stable. And they left behind something else. Lena's eyes widened. The founding seeds. I read about them in the restricted archives. Objects of unknown purpose, hidden on worlds throughout the galaxy. Not unknown, David said. Forgotten. The seeds were meant for species that proved themselves worthy. Species that showed they could think differently, fight differently, survive differently. Reed shook his head. What does this have to do with Protocol Omega? David reached into his pocket and removed a small object. It was a crystal, no larger than his thumb, filled with swirling golden light that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Because we found one, David said, buried in the ice of Antarctica, 20,000 years old. And when we activated it, it gave us everything. Reed stared at the crystal. That is how we developed faster than light, travel so quickly. That is how we knew their weapons would not work against nuclear fission. The Architects left us a gift, Lena breathed. They chose us. They gave us a chance, David corrected. The seed contained knowledge, but also a challenge. A test. We had to prove we were worthy of their legacy. He looked down at the crystal, and it contained something else. A key. A key to what? Before David could answer, the crystal walls of their quarters flickered. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room. It was an alien David had not seen before, a creature made of flowing mercury with dozens of eyes that never stopped moving. Ambassador Hawkins, the creature said. Its voice was like water over stones. I am called Velis. I speak for the Marathi Collective. We have been watching your species with great interest. David slipped the crystal back into his pocket. What kind of interest? The kind that could save your people. Or destroy them. Velus's mercury body rippled. The vote tomorrow will not go in your favor. The Valdari have already bribed enough representatives to ensure your extinction. But there is another way. I am listening. The Council has a rule older than the Charter itself. Any species may challenge the vote by invoking the right of ascension. If successful, the challenging species is immediately granted full membership. No vote required. Lena stepped forward. I have never read about this rule. Because it has not been used in 8 million years, Velus replied. The last species to invoke it was destroyed in the attempt. The test is designed to be impossible. What is the test? Reed demanded. Velus's eyes all turned toward David. The challenger must enter the Chamber of Origins and then retrieve a founding seed from its resting place, alone, unarmed, against whatever defenses the architects left behind. The room was silent. That is suicide, Reed said flatly. We just got a seed by accident. Now you want us to walk into a death trap to get another one? Not another one, David said slowly. The same one. He pulled out the crystal again. This is not just a seed. It is a fragment. The full seed is still in the chamber, waiting for someone to claim it. Someone who already carries its mark. Velus nodded, mercury flowing faster with what might have been excitement. You understand. The architects did not leave gifts randomly. They left trails. Tests within tests. Your species found the fragment because you were meant to find it. The question is whether you are ready for what comes next. Why are you helping us? Lena asked. What do the Marathi gain from this? We gain nothing, Velus admitted. We lose nothing. But we have watched this council become corrupt and stagnant for millions of years. The Valdari and their allies have turned it into a tool for their own power. We would like to see something new, something unexpected. The alien's eyes focused on David. We would like to see what happens when a species that should not exist refuses to die. David looked at the crystal in his hand. The golden light pulsed faster now, as if it could sense what was coming. Tell me about the chamber, he said. Velus's body shifted, forming a 3-dimensional map. The Chamber of Origins is located at the heart of Station Prime. It has not been opened since the architects vanished. The defenses inside are legendary. Energy fields that dissolve matter. Gravity wells that crush intruders into paste. Guardians that exist outside normal time. Sounds fun, Reed muttered. The rite of ascension allows one challenger to enter. Just one. If they succeed, their species is elevated. If they fail, the challenge is forfeit, and the original vote proceeds. So we get one chance, David said. One person. One attempt. Yes. David looked at Lena. He looked at Reed. Both of them knew what he was thinking. Both of them wanted to argue. Neither of them did. How do I invoke the right? Velus's form rippled with something that might have been satisfaction. You announce it before the council. They cannot refuse. The law is absolute. And the Valdari? They will try to stop us. They will try, Velus agreed. They have already tried. 3 delegations were assassinated on their way here. Your survival to this point has been remarkable. Reed's hand moved toward his weapon. They have been hunting us this whole time? Of course. You are a threat they did not anticipate. A variable in an equation they thought they controlled. Velus began to fade. I have told you what I can. The rest is up to you. The council reconvenes in 12 hours. Whatever you are going to do it quickly. The hologram disappeared. David stood alone with his team, holding a fragment of light left behind by gods who died 12 million years ago. This is insane, Reed said. We have no idea what is in that chamber. You could die in seconds. I could, David agreed. But if I do nothing, 8 billion people die anyway. At least this way, there is a chance. Lena touched his arm. Why you? Why does it have to be you? David looked at the crystal. The light inside seemed to reach toward him, responding to something in his blood, his bones, his very existence. Because the seed chose me, he said quietly. I do not know why. I do not know how. But when I touched this fragment for the first time, I saw things. Heard things. The architects left a message, Lena, and it was addressed to me. What did it say? David's jaw tightened. It said that humanity's survival depends on one thing. The Council's final vote. And that vote can only be changed by fire. He closed his fingers around the crystal and walked toward the door that was not supposed to exist. Somehow, it opened for him anyway. The council chamber was different now. When David Hawkins walked onto the central platform for the second time, he felt the change in the air. The lights burned brighter. The silence cut deeper. Every species in the galaxy had heard what happened to the human ambassador who had dared to leave his quarters without permission. They were watching to see what he would say before they killed him. Grand Sovereign. Korthus floated above them all. Golden geometry, burning with cold fury. Ambassador Hawkins. You were confined to your quarters by council decree. Leaving was an act of defiance, punishable by immediate execution. Explain yourself. David stood tall. Behind him, Lena and Reed had been allowed to follow, though both were now flanked by Valdari security drones. Their weapons were gone. Their options were gone. Everything rested on what David said next. Grand Sovereign, David said, I invoke the right of ascension. The chamber exploded, not with sound, with light. Every representative began transmitting at once. Colors flashed. Gravity shifted. The very fabric of the station seemed to vibrate with shock and disbelief. That right has not been invoked in 8 million years, Korthus said. The golden light flickered rapidly. It is considered extinct. Considered, David replied. Not abolished. The law still stands. Any species facing extinction by council vote may challenge that vote by entering the Chamber of Origins. I am challenging. The Valdari representative pushed forward. Its mechanical shell burned red-hot with rage. This is a trick. A human deception. They do not have the right. The law is clear. Another voice cut through. David recognized it as Velis, the Mercury being who had given them this chance. Any species may invoke the right of ascension. There are no exceptions. There are no qualifications. The human has spoken the words. The challenge is made. Korthus was silent for a long moment. When the Grand Sovereign spoke again, the voice had changed. It was older now, heavier, as if something ancient had woken up inside the golden light. The right of ascension is invoked. The Chamber of Origins will open. One human will enter. One human will face the trials left by the architects 12 million years ago. This is absurd, the Valdari sputtered. No organic being has survived the chamber. The human will die, and we will proceed with the vote anyway. That is correct, Korthus agreed. If the challenger fails, the vote proceeds. If the challenger succeeds, humanity is elevated to full council membership immediately. The vote becomes void. The golden geometry shifted toward David. Ambassador Hawkins, do you understand what you are agreeing to? I understand. Do you understand that you will face the trials alone? No weapons. No technology. No assistance of any kind. I understand. Do you understand that you will almost certainly die? David smiled. It was a strange smile. Not afraid. Not confident. Something else entirely. Grand Sovereign, he said, humanity has been almost certainly dying since the day we climbed down from the trees. We are still here. The chamber fell silent. Corthus extended one geometric limb toward the far wall. A section of the station that had appeared solid began to change. Metal flowed like water. Crystal grew from nothing. A doorway formed where none had existed before. Beyond it was darkness so complete that light seemed to fall into it and never return. The Chamber of Origins awaits, Corthus intoned. Enter, Ambassador. Face the judgment of the architects. Show us if humanity deserves to exist. David turned to Lena and Reed one last time. Lena's eyes were wet. Reed's face was stone. Both of them wanted to say something. Neither of them could find the words. If I do not come back, David said quietly, make sure they remember us. Make sure someone knows that we tried. Then he walked toward the darkness and let it swallow him whole. The chamber closed behind him. For one heartbeat, there was nothing. No sound, no light, no sensation at all. David floated in absolute void, unable to tell if he was falling or rising or standing still. Then the first trial began. Light erupted around him. He was standing on a platform of pure crystal, suspended over an infinite drop. Above him, shapes moved. Massive shapes. Ancient shapes. Things that had been built before his species existed and would exist long after his species was gone. Challenger, a voice boomed. It was not like Corthus's voice. This voice was older, harder, more real than anything David had ever heard. You seek to claim the birthright of the architects. You seek to elevate your kind above their station. State your worth. David's throat was dry. His hands were shaking. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to run. He stayed. I am David Hawkins, he said. Ambassador of Earth, representative of humanity. I stand before you because my people face extinction. I stand before you because we refuse to accept that fate. Refusal is not enough. Many species have refused. All have failed. Why should humans succeed where others have fallen? The platform beneath David began to move. He was being carried forward through the void, past monuments so vast he could not see their edges, past machines that hummed with power beyond comprehension, past graves of species that had tried and died in this very chamber. Because we are stubborn, David said. Because we do not know when to quit. Because when the universe tells us something is impossible, we do it anyway. Stubbornness is a flaw. IT leads to destruction. Sometimes. But it also leads to survival. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived wars that killed millions. We survived because when everything told us to give up, we refused. The platform stopped. David stood before a wall of fire that stretched in every direction. Through the flames, he could see something glowing. The seed, the full seed. It pulsed with golden light that called to the fragment in his blood. The first trial, the voice announced. The trial of sacrifice. To advance, you must give up what you value most. State your sacrifice. David stared at the fire. He could feel its heat even from here. It was not normal fire. It burned thought, memory, self. What do you want? He asked. What are you willing to give? David closed his eyes. He thought of Earth. He thought of his family. His wife, Maria, waiting at home. His daughter, Elena, only 6 years old, who did not understand why her father had to go so far away. He thought of everything he had ever loved and everything he still wanted to do. Yet then he thought of 8 billion people who would die if he failed. Everything, he said. I give you everything. My memories. my future, myself. Take whatever you need. Just let my people live. The fire roared higher. David felt something being pulled from him. Not physically. Deeper than that. He felt his earliest memories dissolving. His mother's face. His father's voice. The first time he held his daughter. All of it fading like dreams upon waking. He screamed. Not in pain, though there was pain. He screamed in loss. In grief. In the terrible understanding of what he was giving up. And then the fire parted. David fell forward, gasping. His mind was full of holes now. Dark spaces where light used to be. He could not remember his wife's name. He could not remember where he was born. He only knew that he was human and that he had to keep moving. The seed was closer now. Through his tears, David could see it waiting. The second trial awaits, the voice announced. The trial of truth. Answer honestly, or be destroyed. The architects left. One question for those who seek to claim their legacy. David forced himself to stand. His legs shook. His mind screamed. But he stood. Ask, he said. The void filled with the faces of every species humanity had ever feared. Every threat. Every nightmare. Every monster from every story ever told. They surrounded him, pressing in, their eyes full of hunger and hate. Why do you deserve to live when so many have died? David looked at the faces. He saw the Valdari among them. He saw the council that wanted to destroy his people. He saw billions of years of species that had risen and fallen while the universe watched without caring. We do not deserve it, he said quietly. No species deserves to live. We just choose to live anyway. We choose to fight. We choose to hope. We choose to love even when it hurts, and try even when we fail, and believe in tomorrow, even when today is falling apart. The faces pressed closer. That is not an answer. Yes, it is, David said. It is the only answer there is. The universe does not care about us. It never has. We had to learn to care about ourselves. That is what makes us different. That is what makes us human. The faces began to dissolve. One by one, they faded into the darkness. The trials are complete, the voice said. It sounded different now, softer, almost sad. You have given what was asked. You have spoken the truth we have waited to hear. The seed descended. It floated toward David like a star falling from heaven. The architects built this chamber to find worthy successors. For 12 million years. None have passed. Today, that changes. David reached out with trembling hands. His fingers touched the seed. Light exploded through him. Through the chamber. Through the station. Through the galaxy itself. And far away, on a small blue planet called Earth, 8 billion people looked up at the sky as the stars themselves seemed to bow. The council chamber was in chaos. Representatives fled in every direction. Warning signals screamed through every frequency. The golden light of Grand Sovereign, Corthus, flickered wildly as ancient systems that had not activated in 12 million years suddenly roared to life. And at the center of it all, the Chamber of Origins opened. David Hawkins walked out of the darkness. But he was not the same man who had walked in. Golden light flowed through his veins, visible beneath his skin like rivers of fire. His eyes burned with knowledge that no human had ever possessed. And in his hands, he carried the founding seed, complete and whole, pulsing with power that made reality itself bend around it. What have you done? The Valdari representative screamed. Its mechanical shell was overheating, circuits melting from the energy flooding the station. What have you done to the chamber? David did not answer. He walked to the central platform and stood there waiting as the chaos slowly died down around him. One by one, the representatives stopped fleeing. One by one, They turned to look at the human who had done the impossible. Korthus descended. The Grand Sovereign's form had changed. It was smaller now, humbler. The arrogant geometry had smoothed into something almost reverential. "The rite of ascension has been fulfilled," Korthus announced. The voice trembled in a way it never had before. "The human ambassador has passed the trials of the architects. By the law that existed before this council was born, humanity is hereby elevated to full membership. The extinction vote is void." The Valdari surged forward. "This is impossible. This is a trick. No organic being has ever survived the chamber. The trials were designed to destroy anything that entered." "The trials were designed to test," David said. His voice had changed too. It was deeper, older, filled with echoes of something vast. Not to destroy. The architects did not want to kill challengers. They wanted to find one worth saving. And they chose humans? Another representative pushed through the crowd. It was a being made of crystalline ice, one of the species that had voted for extinction. Humans? A species that has existed for barely a moment? A species that was throwing rocks at each other when we were building starships? David turned to face the ice creature. The golden light in his veins pulsed brighter. "Time means nothing to the architects," he said. "They did not measure worth by age. They measured it by potential, by adaptability, by the ability to survive against impossible odds." He held up the seed. "They left this galaxy 12 million years ago because they failed their own test. They created weapons too powerful to control. They destroyed themselves trying to fight an enemy they never should have fought." The chamber was silent now. Every representative listening. Every species waiting. "But before they died," David continued, "they left a message. A warning. And a gift. They knew that someday another species would face the same enemy. They wanted to give that species a chance." "What enemy?" Korthus asked. The golden light flickered with something that might have been fear. The architects were destroyed by internal conflict. Their own weapons consumed them. "No," David shook his head. "That is the story you were told. The story they wanted you to believe. But the truth is different." He raised the seed above his head. Light exploded outward, forming a holographic display that filled the entire chamber. It showed galaxies. Thousands of them, millions, each one marked with a black stain that spread like disease. "The architects called them the Hollow," David said. "Beings from between dimensions. They do not want resources. They do not want territory. They consume reality itself. They have destroyed 100 galaxies already. And they are coming here." The display zoomed in on the Milky Way. A black stain was already visible at the edge of the galaxy. Small, almost invisible, but growing. "This is why the architects watched over developing species," David explained. "This is why they created the Council and the Containment Accords. They were not trying to control evolution. They were trying to find warriors. Species that could fight an enemy made of nothing." The Valdari representative stepped back. Its red shell flickered with terror. "This is a lie. Another human deception. Search your own archives," David said coldly. "The evidence is there. It has always been there. Hidden by species that did not want you to know. Species that cut deals with the Hollow. Species that traded their neighbors for their own survival." He turned to look directly at the Valdari. "Species like yours." The chamber erupted again. But this time, the anger was not directed at humanity. Delegations surrounded the Valdari, demanding answers. The ice creatures formed barriers. The Mercury beings of the Marathi Collective rose up like a silver wave. "You knew," Velas said. The alien's voice was soft, but it cut through the noise like a blade. "The Valdari have known about the Hollow for 1,000,000 years. You have been feeding them, sacrificing species to keep them satisfied. That is why you have pushed so hard for the containment accords, not to protect developing worlds, but to identify targets. The Valdari shell began to crack. We had no choice. The hollow cannot be stopped. They cannot be fought. The only option is to delay them, to give them something to consume, so they leave the rest of us alone. You murdered civilizations, Lena whispered. She had pushed through the crowd to stand beside David. Her face was pale with horror. You wiped out hundreds of species just to buy yourself time. And we would do it again, the Valdari snarled. The hollow will come regardless. Better that some survive than none at all. David raised his hand. The seed's light intensified, and the Valdari shell froze in place. The architects disagreed, David said. They believed that the hollow could be stopped, not by running, not by sacrificing others, but by standing together, by combining the strengths of every species in the galaxy. They failed, the Valdari spat. Their weapons backfired. Their unity crumbled. They died anyway. They failed because they tried to do it alone. David lowered his hand. The Valdari collapsed to the floor, its shell cracked and smoking. They built weapons instead of alliances. They sought power instead of understanding. They made the same mistake you made. They forgot that survival is not about being the strongest. It is about being together. Corthus floated closer. Ambassador Hawkins, if what you say is true, the hollow will reach this sector within 1,000 years. Perhaps less. How does humanity propose to stop them? David looked around the chamber, at the representatives of 947 species, at beings of energy and ice and crystal and flesh, at the galaxy's entire collected wisdom and power and fear. We do not propose to stop them, he said. We propose to fight them. All of us, together. He held up the seed one final time. The architects left this for their successors. It contains knowledge, technology, weapons that they never had time to finish. But more importantly, it contains a message. The holographic display shifted. Words appeared in a language that had not been spoken for 12 million years. But somehow, every being in the chamber understood them. The hollow can be defeated, but only by those who refuse to fall alone. Humanity did not come here to beg for our lives, David said. We came here to offer you a choice. Stand with us and fight, or stand apart and fall, one by one, species by species, until there is nothing left to consume. The chamber was silent. The weight of 12 million years of fear and secrets pressed down on everyone present. Then, slowly, one representative stepped forward. It was the ice creature that had voted for extinction just hours ago. The Crystri have made many enemies, it said. We have trusted no one for 100,000 years. But if the hollow are real, if this threat is coming, then trust is all we have left. It turned to face Corthus. The Crystri vote to stand with humanity. Another representative followed. Then another. Then dozens. Then hundreds. David watched as the galaxy chose hope over fear, as species that had hated each other for millennia put aside their differences, as the council transformed from a tool of oppression into something new, something better. But in the corner of his vision, he saw the Valdari representative dragging itself toward the exit. Its cracked shell flickered with messages being transmitted somewhere far away, somewhere dark, somewhere hungry. The first battle was won. But the war was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the day humanity claimed its place among the stars. 6 months of negotiations, alliances, and preparations for a war that most species still could not truly believe was coming. But David Hawkins believed. The seed had shown him things that still haunted his dreams. And now, standing on the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity Station. He watched those nightmares become real. The hollow had arrived early. The black stain on the edge of the galaxy, that had seemed so distant in the council chamber, was now visible to the naked eye. A wound in space itself, spreading across 3 star systems that had once held thriving civilizations. The Marathi homeworld was already gone. 2 billion beings consumed in less than a week. Ambassador Hawkins. General Reed appeared at his side. The old soldier looked exhausted. They all looked exhausted now. The joint fleet is assembled. 412 species have contributed ships. It is the largest military force in galactic history. David did not look away from the darkness. And it might not be enough. The architect's weapons are operational. The engineers finished the gravity well generators last night. The Crystari contributed their ice shields. The Valdari... Reed paused. The ones who defected anyway. They shared their energy disruption technology. None of it has ever been tested against the hollow. No, Reed admitted. It has not. Lena joined them. Her face was pale, but her eyes were determined. In the months since the chamber, she had become humanity's foremost expert on architect technology. She understood the seed better than anyone except David himself. The seed is responding, she said quietly. The closer the hollow get, the brighter it burns. It is trying to tell us something. David reached into his jacket and pulled out the crystal. It was warm against his skin, pulsing with light that matched his heartbeat. He had carried it every moment since the chamber. It had become part of him. The architects did not just leave weapons, he said. They left a plan. I have been seeing fragments of it in my dreams. Pieces that do not make sense yet. We do not have time for pieces, Reed said. The hollow will reach the defense line in 18 hours. We need answers now. David closed his eyes. The seed's light intensified, flooding his mind with images. Fire, darkness, a door that should not exist. Voices screaming in languages that had been dead for 12 million years. And then, suddenly, clarity. The Chamber of Origins, David breathed. It was not just a test. It was a key. A key to something the architects built, but never had time to use. Lena leaned forward. A weapon? More than a weapon. The architects knew they could not defeat the hollow with force alone. The hollow exists between dimensions. They cannot be killed in the traditional sense. But they can be contained, sealed away, cut off from our reality forever. How? David opened his eyes. They were glowing gold now, just like they had when he emerged from the chamber. The architects built a door, a gateway to the space between dimensions. Their plan was to lure the hollow through that door and then close it behind them. Trap them in the void forever. Why did they not do it? Reed demanded. Because opening the door requires sacrifice. Not just any sacrifice. A living being has to hold the door open while the hollow passes through. And once it closes, David's voice trailed off. Nothing survives on the other side. The observation deck was silent. The weight of what David was saying pressed down on all of them. You are talking about suicide, Lena whispered. Someone has to die to save everyone else. The architects could not agree on who should make that sacrifice. They argued. They fought. And while they debated, the hollow consumed them anyway. David looked down at the seed in his hand. They left the door for their successors to use. They hoped we would be better than they were. Reed's jaw tightened. There has to be another way. There is not. David turned to face them both. The seed showed me everything. Every option. Every alternative. The architects spent thousands of years looking for another solution. They found nothing. Then we keep fighting, Reed insisted. We use their weapons. We buy time. we find something they missed. And how many species die while we search? David asked quietly. How many worlds fall? The Marathi are already gone. Gahalo are faster than we expected, stronger than we feared. Every day we delay, millions more are consumed. He looked back at the darkness spreading across the stars. I did not survive the chamber just to watch the galaxy die, he said. The architects chose humanity for a reason. They saw something in us that they did not see in themselves. The ability to make impossible choices. The willingness to sacrifice everything for those we love. Lena grabbed his arm. David, no. There has to be someone else. Anyone else. The seed is bonded to me, David said gently. It chose me in the chamber. I am the only one who can open the door. The only one who can hold it long enough for the hollow to pass through. Reed stepped forward. Ambassador, I have spent my entire life protecting Earth. I have sent thousands of soldiers to their deaths. But I have never asked anyone to do something I would not do myself. He straightened his uniform. If someone has to hold that door, it should be me. You cannot, David replied. The seed will not respond to anyone else. I am sorry, old friend. This is the one battle you cannot fight for me. The observation deck fell silent again. Outside, the black stain continued to grow. Inside, 3 humans faced the end of everything they had ever known. Then Lena spoke. Her voice was steady, despite the tears running down her face. You said the architects argued about who should make the sacrifice. They could not agree. But we are not architects. She took David's hand. We are human. And humans do not abandon their own. Lena ... You said the door needs someone to hold it open. But you did not say that person has to hold it alone. She squeezed his hand. I am coming with you. Reed stepped closer. So am I. David looked at them both. These 2 people who had stood beside him since the beginning, who had faced impossible odds without flinching, who represented everything that made humanity worth saving. If you come with me, you will die, he said. Then we die together, Lena replied simply. That is what humans do. 18 hours later, the joint fleet engaged the hollow at the edge of the blackened zone. Ships from 412 species fought side by side for the first time in galactic history. Crystally ice shields deflected impossible energies. Valdari weapons tore holes in the void. Morathi survivors piloted kamikaze runs into the heart of the darkness. And at the center of the battle, a small human shuttle flew directly toward the largest concentration of hollow. David sat at the controls. Lena sat beside him. Reed stood behind them both, steady as a mountain. The door is there, David said, pointing at a point in space that looked no different from any other. But through the seed's light, he could see it. A crack in reality. A passage to somewhere else. When I open it, the hollow will sense it. They will be drawn through like moths to a flame. And we hold the door, Reed said, until the last of them passes through. Then we let go, and the door closes forever. Lena reached over and took David's hand. For what it is worth, I would not want to be anywhere else. David smiled. It was the first real smile he had worn in months. Neither would I. He raised the seed. Its light exploded outward, brighter than any star, brighter than the darkness consuming the galaxy. The crack in reality widened into a door, a passage into infinite nothing. The hollow screamed, not in fear, in hunger. They sensed the door and turned away from the fleet, away from the stars, away from everything except the 3 humans holding a gateway to oblivion. They came in waves, shadows made of absence, voids shaped like nightmares, each one passing through the door, drawn by the light of the seed, consumed by the emptiness beyond, David felt himself being pulled apart. The seed demanded everything. His memories, his hopes, his very existence. But he held on, because beside him, Lena held on too. And behind them, Reed stood firm, anchoring them all with nothing but human stubbornness and love. The last hollow passed through the door. David looked at Lena. She was fading. They all were, but her eyes were at peace. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me what humanity can be." David let go of the seed. The door slammed shut. Light exploded across the galaxy. And in the council chamber of the newly rebuilt Station Prime. 947 species watched as the black stain vanished from the stars. Grand, sovereign Corthus rose before the assembly. The golden light was steady now, reverent. "The hollow are gone," Corthus announced. "Sealed away forever by 3 humans who gave everything so that we might live." The chamber erupted in celebration. But it was a celebration tempered with grief, with awe, with the understanding that everything had changed. "From this day forward," Corthus continued, "the human species will hold the highest seat in this council. Not because they were the oldest or the strongest, but because when the universe asked who would sacrifice everything for those they loved, they answered." A new light appeared in the chamber, not golden like Corthus. Something different, something that burned with the colors of Earth's sunrise. "Let the galaxy remember their names," Corthus intoned. Ambassador David Hawkins, Dr. Lena Moss, General Thomas Wright, the humans who saved us all. On Earth, 8 billion people looked up at the stars. They could not see the battle that had been fought. They could not know the sacrifice that had been made. But somehow, deep in their hearts, they felt it. They felt that they were no longer alone. And they felt that somewhere, somehow, 3 of their own were finally at peace. The stars seemed brighter that night. As if the galaxy itself was saying thank you. As if the architects, wherever they were finally able to rest. And as for humanity, they did what they had always done. They looked at the impossible darkness between the stars and said the same words they had been saying since the first. Human looked up at the night sky. "We will find a way. We always do."